this week what we're planning on doing is going from having the shading done around the eyes and the bridge of the nose to completing the nose and the forehead and all the shading involved. Then probably next week we will start working on getting the mouth and the ears and the hair done. All right, so hopefully in 2 weeks we should have pretty close to finished portraits. All right, let's begin. Okay, so I'm continuing to work on my eyebrow over here. In here I need to fill in some more. Again, as with all hair, eyebrows are a little thinner than most hair, but you still need some layers. So you want to get the layers going. You want to get some individual strands of hair, things that kind of don't go in the same way as everything else. Same thing over here, just adding a few with a sharp pencil strands of hair that will definitely help it look more authentic, more real. I'm working with your eraser. My eraser is kind of dull. I'm going to see if I can find a better one. Also keep your pencil sharp. So I'm using just this little pencil sharpener. That's all I got in my room here. Make sure you put your pencil scrapings in the trash when you sharpen your pencil. And just keep continuing working. So right under here, above the glass frame, where that shadow is just a little bit of a shadow, but it kind of ends there. And we get something pretty bright right in here. So I'm going to shade around it, not as dark as the hairs on the eyebrow, but it is definitely darker than that area there. And when I'm shading, sometimes I draw a circle or an oval where that is, just so that I can see where it's going. It's a little bigger than it actually is. I'm going to cut it down there, and I'm going to keep working it. Now over on this side is a little darker, but even though that's on the light side of the head, it is definitely a little bit darker. Probably just the brightest light is somehow hitting over here and it's moving over. Somewhere right about here, kind of almost in line with the frame of the glass, is where my hairline starts. So I'm going to start working that up, and it comes up and in a little bit, and then it comes out again, and then it's coming up and around. So from here it's going to go in a little bit, but as individual kind of hair strands, and then it's going to go up and trying to see where it comes to the scalp. And if I'm looking at this point here that I created, where the hairline starts over here, this side is a little higher. It's coming up a little further. So I'm going to kind of bring that up around here. And again, these lines are going to disappear into shading. What happens is the hair, especially if the light's coming from this side, the hair here is going to make a nice shadow here, and I can definitely see that. So I'm going to start putting in some shadow with the side of my pencil underneath that spot. And you'll see it'll start to get darker and blacker, dark gray. And I'm not holding way up. If I wanted that to be really dark, I would hold my pressure way up here to get that really dark. But as it gradually gets onto the face, I don't want really dark areas on my face because I don't have that dark skin. Some people do. But I want it to start blending out, getting slightly lighter, so I'm going to ease off the pressure as I come this way. There is a bit of a highlight over here. It's not a very strong highlight, so I just want to change the value of the pencil. I'm not going to leave it the white of the page, but I definitely want to get some lighter value in there. I'm going to have to do some work because my hair has grays in it. I'm going to want to do some work where, like I said before with the eyebrow, where I'm using two shadows to kind of separate and make that gray hair look like it's there. I also want to make some of the darker hairs apparent too. So I want to work back and forth, and I might use my eraser, especially if I could find one with a sharper edge, to try and make some of those lighter values. So again, I want to be shading darker in here. It's kind of going in this direction where the hairline is, and then getting lighter. And look at the positions of this here and the eyelashes. I'm looking carefully to try and match that shape that I see in here where the white is, in between that sort of V shape there. This is really coming out more this way, so it's not really a V shape. So I'm going to try and work that to make that look more like I need it to look. And some shading under here where the light's getting blocked from the hair. And then just get a little lighter as it dissipates out to my regular skin tone. Again, I'm working with the side of the tip of the pencil point. I'm not working with the point very much here. And again, I want to look at where those brighter highlights are. Being that the strongest light is on this side, one would think that I'd have some really bright highlights here, but I'm not seeing that too much. Seeing that more on the lower part of my face, but not as much in the top, and I'm seeing it in the hair a little bit. So what I actually have a very bright highlight over here. It might be a secondary light. I have more than one light on in my room. So I'm gonna use my eraser to put in that highlight there. And if I shade around it darker, that will start to stand out more like a brighter highlight. Again, this is the darker side anyway, so I want this side lighter than that side. It's all about relative light and dark, meaning how does one darkness compare to the other. Now, we were working in here. There is some hairs coming up over here I can see. I just want to get those in. And then some light shading. And there are some definitely nice highlights in this area. I'm going to avoid this area for a minute and work around it and get those other tones in, because I want to leave the very lightest tones for around this area. I'm trying to just kind of sculpt out. When I say sculpt, I'm not talking about actual sculpture. I'm talking about creating those forms of the areas where the light's hitting. So I'm sculpting those out by leaving them untouched right now and going for the other skin tones. And again, most people at this point would be blending a lot more than I am with the skin tones. I may blend later, but for now, I want to keep it as much just the pencil work as possible. Blending, you kind of get a quick result, but it kind of misses things, and it's not as controlled as drawing what you see and then shading it. And then if you blend afterward, it will definitely look better. I have a little highlight over this ridge here where there's sort of like a wrinkle in my forehead. So I'm going to shade around that. And you'll see the underneath the ridge is where it's dark. And you're going to see that ridge pop out a little bit because of the shading that I'm doing. Still looking like this side is darker than this one, so I probably want to push this side even a little darker. And just keep going over it and over it until you get the right amount of shades on both sides. I'm not seeing a lot of dark under the top of the hair here. What my hair kind of does over here is I've got a section that's going up around over here. So it's kind of changing directions there. Then I have a little bit that's coming around this way. And I'm just kind of putting in where the main tufts and areas of hair are. And it comes down here a bit. And it hits its lowest point somewhere around here and then curves its way back. And certainly what's going to happen here is I'm going to have, because it's on top and some of the lighter hair values are going to be in here, and I can get in some of, again, those white lines by shading around them. And you see it's starting to look like lighter color hair against shadowed background over there. And that's kind of what I'm going for. You don't want the hairs to be too thick, but if they're clumped together, you might get a nice bright clump in some places. And just keep marking out the areas. Here it's very bright, so I'm going to go with really light shading over here. Pencil's barely touching the paper. And then over here it kind of gets darker a little bit on this side. And starting right around over here, it's going to continually get darker as it curves around. Oops, I went into that highlighted area that I was trying to avoid. Don't make perfect shapes. You don't want it to appear artificial. Hair's curving this way. I've got a little piece that's coming over around here, a little section, and then it comes up this way. You see it's going to go up above the skull. I have another section that crosses over that section. I'm just mapping out where those sections are. And we're going to do a lot more with the hair later. I really want to stick to the skin area. I have a darker shadow over in this direction. Sometimes right above the eyebrows there's a little bit of a light streak where the light hits it, but if you're not seeing that, then don't put it in. You gotta be what you actually see that you're trying to get. Feeling a little bit like Bob Ross talking my way through a drawing. I don't do this often. This is pretty bright over here, so I want to tone around it to start to get some of those values in place. And if I go too dark, remember I can always, we're not really fixing it, we are drawing it lighter with the pencil eraser. Your eraser is a drawing tool, so use it that way. You can see it's starting to get, this whole upper half is starting to get the right shading where it looks three-dimensional. Lights hitting from the front. Some of the things I'm sort of getting dotted white areas. So instead of trying to shade that, one of the techniques that you can use that is pretty successful is gently and carefully making a bunch of circles that overlap. Just softly with your pencil to get in the darker and lighter areas. Bigger circular shapes will let more light in the middle. You don't want the circles to be so obvious. You're just going softly in a circular motion and you're going to get some of that light in. Just by virtue of the center of the circles, it's going to leave a little sort of dotted light. And of course, if you have an area that's lighter, you can leave that. This side is a little darker than the other one. And in the center, there's some white here. I want to go in with my eraser and kind of add a little more white, and then just use that circular motion to pull some of that back in. I hope you can hear me because I'm talking kind of soft by now. Alright, so I can work on this for hours and hours, and I'll probably put a lot more work into it. But you can see I'm starting to get what's starting to look like a portrait. I gotta come do a lot more of my hair. It's coming around and down this way a little bit. And again, we're not on the hair yet, just kind of mapping it out where it is. On this side, because it's a bit overgrown now, it's sticking out a little bit over here, and then it kind of comes in to where the ear's going to be. It's going to come into here. So I'll get all of that going in one of the next few videos. But for now, this is where I am. I will keep working it, and I'll do it in front of the camera so you can watch what I'm doing and try to emulate it at home. Emulate means to copy, right? So I want you to try and work on your own portraits as you develop them. Go really slowly. I always do. Absolutely no rush. if you have some of those lines still available, you want to kind of make those kind of disappear, either with shading or you can erase them out a little bit. You don't need lines through the middle of your face that aren't there. Just make them kind of disappear. Next video, I'm going to work on the bottom of the nose because that's the hardest part of the nose. We're going to get that in place, and I think it's starting to look a little more like me. So I will post some more video and let's see where you can get with yours. All right. I'm going to try something a little different. I am looking at the picture from a different angle. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm right-handed, and I noticed in my last video a lot of, when I was working around the eyes and stuff, a lot of what I was doing was covered by my hand. So I moved the camera to my left, and I want to continue working there. You can see I've got most of the forehead in. Again, I still have not done any blending at all. It's all just placing different values, and I can always blend that later if I choose to. So I wanted to start getting the basic shapes of the nose. So as I said, when we did the edge of the nose, there's bone up here, and then down below we have like two pieces of cartilage that come together, and there's kind of a seam in between them, and that kind of causes a little bit of an indent, and I have a tiny little bit of an indent in my nose, so I don't want to leave that out. As I said, my nose, when I'm looking at the relative spacing between the bottom of the glasses and where my nose is, it is not as far down as this original mark, so it's not that far off. Just each person is going to be a little different. It also depends upon the angle you're looking at things. So my nostril is right around here, and again, we want to look at the relationship between the side of the nose, where that dark shading is, where the nostril starts, and the bottom of the glasses. Is it really close? Is it a little further away? For me, it's a little bit closer than I had it there, and I want to keep working that. Now that's a pretty thick line, but remember this side of the nose is shadowed, so I'm going to turn that into a shadow, so it won't be so much of a line. It hooks under here, and then what I'm seeing from my nostril is it comes under here, the opening part of the nostril, and over here as well. I put in a little bit of that last time. And over here, that's pretty close to where it is, and I don't want to be as dark on this side because this is the light side. This is where the source of light is, and I will blend some of that out or erase some of it out as I see fit. Typically around the nostrils and branching out toward the mouth, there's a little bit of a line in your face, and that line is where your cheeks start. Remember, the mouth area is a sphere. So when the skin flaps, there's a little indent over there, and where that goes. On this side, it's starting right around here is where I can see it, and it's coming down here. And that's going to help me get that shape of where the skin is, where my mustache is going to start, and so forth. Right here, it's a pretty, not as dark as up here on this side of the nose, but it is pretty dark in the shadow over there. And then I have a highlight ridge over here on this side. So I want to get that shading in. I want to be darker, again, where it's darker. And this is all from observation, so make sure that you're looking at what you're doing. And the more you do and the more you observe, the less it's going to look like lines, and the more it's going to start looking like 3D forms. You want to really push those dark shadows. Again, you probably don't want to be as dark as the black of the glasses in my case, but you're kind of almost approaching that in some parts. And then out onto the face, the nose is casting a bit of a shadow here. I don't want to show a line where that shadow is, but I definitely want the shadow to show. And it's going to get, as it gets closer to the nostril, it's going to get dark and make it a little bit indistinguishable to see between that and that. And then the skin kind of gets much lighter there, and beyond, as I said, there's kind of a bright area over here, and then beyond that, it's going to start get gradually darker under here. So you can see, because I did some of the shading before in the last video and the one before it, I don't have a lot to do on the nose. I do have to get some of the shading underneath. So where the light is a little bit below my nose right now. So it is lighter than it normally would be down here. I do have overhead light as well, which is casting a little bit of a shadow over here. But it's definitely going to be a little bit darker in this area. So you want to give that some attention. And your highlights are going to be probably where it's hitting the brightest. Will probably be up in this area. On this side, because this is the darker side, probably not so highlight. I have a little bit of a highlight up in here. What I'm going to do with that is I'm going to actually go the same tone as the rest of it, and then I'm going to use my eraser to draw in a little where that highlight is. Again, I have a pretty poor eraser here, so it's a little bit of a struggle, but use your eraser as a drawing tool and that will help. Just dabbing will take down some of that darker tone. And then over here, because I have a pretty bright highlight, I kind of need to be a little darker around it so that highlight stands out. Remember, I put that in last time. And again, I don't want a line around it, I just want it to be differentiated by shadowing. There's a little bit of darker tone up here. Get those tones the way you need them to be. The more tones you have on here, the more realistic it's going to get. And you want to clearly get things marked in and those tones. My lines are kind of sketchy right now, and if I do blend them, that will blend out. But really just work your pencil. You don't really need to blend to get that in. A little bit on the side of the nose here is going to be shadowed because of the glasses. So it will get a little darker in some spots on the nose here, and also because of the way the forms are shaped. So you want to make sure you're getting some of the tones that you need in those shapes. And the more you're able to do that, the more realistic it's going to start to look. So I really didn't have a lot to work on for the nose. I'm going to work on the cheeks a little bit. I'm seeing the cheek ending. See where the shadow is underneath, where the glasses are kind of making a shadow? Right where that's ending, I'm seeing sort of like a muscular formation in my cheek. And what that's doing is it is causing a ridge, and where the ridge is, there's a little bit of a darker shadow. I lost some of the light because my computer went to sleep. So I'm going to just start shading some of that. Again, I'm holding the pencil way in the back and using the side of the lead. Side of the graphite, I should say. I always called it a lead pencil when I was growing up. The reality is it's been graphite since long before I was born. We don't use lead in pencils anymore. And again, I want to make sure I get that highlight. It's getting a little darker around here, and it's highlighted in here. Not bright white highlight, so I want to put some shade on there with very, very little pressure, and then a little more pressure around here as I go along. And it's getting a little lighter over here until it gets to that really dark area. I try to show you on the other video up here where this and this don't align, and that's because of the refraction of the glass. And the same thing happens at the bottom. You start to get that dark shade where the edge of the face is starting, and it doesn't really line up with this dark here. But that's because of the glasses are moving it. You won't have that if you don't wear glasses. But you want to get those dark tones. You want to still make sure that where the glasses are is darker. So come back in and reinforce that as many times as you need. And start putting in some of the shades and tones. So there's sort of a very light, almost pocket over here. So I'm going to go with some really, really barely touching it, light shading over here. As it gets darker, where that muscle is forming. And down here, you got that lighter streak, that lighter area. Get that tone right up to the glasses. Unless you're seeing a white highlight there, you shouldn't see it on the drawing. Notice how there's very little white of the page that's going to be left. And on this side, I've got a pretty bright highlight over in this area, and it has another little piece here. And again, I wouldn't normally, if I was drawing, put in these marks, but I'm putting it in to show you. I'm going to eliminate them with my pencil work. but those are almost white. So I'm going to leave that area for now, the white of the page, and tone next to it and around it with a slightly darker tone. This is the highlight side of the face, so it should be lighter overall than the dark side. Where that little separation between that is where another muscle is forming. And over here is the end of that muscle on the face. And the way the light is hitting that muscle, it's kind of curving in over here. So it's a little darker over here. It's kind of lighter over here, because this is the part that's sticking out more. And it's pretty bright over here. I want to actually erase some of that out to get that brightness. And even inside where that kind of curved muscle line is for where the mouth and the cheek meet, there's a little shadowing in here, and then there's more down here, and it starts to go this way. But right in here is a pretty light, almost white. So I want to just barely shade that a tiny little bit. Then I could come back into the darker skin tone. Under the nostrils are often some of your darkest blacks. You don't want it to look like you have holes in your face, so don't overdo it. But at the same token, you want to get that dark where the light's not going. And also, there's often a little bit of a dark cast shadow under it. So you get that in, get in a little bit of the cast shadow, and make sure that you have plenty of room that you're leaving where the nostril ends, because you need some thickness of that skin over there. Have a little bit of a highlight over here, so I want to kind of put that back in with my pencil. It's great to have the pencil as a drawing tool. And then underneath here is a little bit in the shadows. And so the way my mustache is going, most of you won't have this to think about. Do you have a mustache? I'm going to put in the basic shape, is kind of like that. Kind of similar to the shape of an upper lip, right? This is not coming down far enough. It's making the nose uneven. So I need that to come down a little bit more and this to come down a little more. And maybe soften that because it's on the highlight side. Although where it's curved in, it's blocking the light. So that's kind of the shape of the mustache, and I'm going to be putting that in one of the later videos, but I just wanted to kind of map that out. I have a dark streak over here where there's some muscle. Another highlight, dark, dark, highlight. A little bit dark around here. Not terribly dark, but certainly darker than the highlight area over there. And around the edge of the glasses, I've got some dark. Over here it's very dark. Around the edges of the glasses, where I'm starting to get some of the face in over there. Over here it's kind of lighter, and there are some darker areas where you can see in my face the muscles kind of bulge out a little bit. And then it's going to go into the beard area. So I'm not going to do too much more on this video. I do want to firm up some of these muscle shapes and get in some more tones. But you'll see that once I have those, it's starting to look more and more like me, the more that I'm getting these areas locked in. Kind of above the mustache, there's a little bit of a weird shadow there. And on this side, the mustache actually comes down a little faster on this side. And this area, it's a little darker around here. So that's where I'm going to leave this one. Notice the ears will go over here and here. My mouth is going to come right under where the mustache is. And then starting below my lower lip, I'll start developing the chin. I think that's going to come down a little bit more. And the beard will come down below that. All right, so that's enough for this video. Hopefully that was better having the camera on that side to be able to see more. All right, have a wonderful day, and we'll talk more.